The day everything changed, the sun was rising slowly over Chennai, and the city was beginning to wake up with the usual sounds of people preparing for a new day. But inside the Pichai household, silence had taken over. Sundar Pichai sat on the edge of his bed, his hands shaking, his eyes staring at the floor. His mother, Lakshmi Pichai, had passed away just hours before. The woman who had been his guiding light, his strength, and his anchor was gone. His heart felt heavy, and his mind was full of memories. He remembered her simple words when he was a boy. Never let your success make you arrogant, Sundar. Always respect people no matter who they are. Those words had guided him through his journey from a middle-class boy in India to becoming the CEO of Google. And now those words were echoing in his heart. Stronger than ever, the news of Lakshmi's death spread quickly. Many people came forward to offer condolences, but Sundar felt something deeper inside him. It was not just grief. It was an emptiness he could not describe. He was a man who had achieved everything the world respected: power, recognition, wealth. But in this moment, none of it mattered. All he wanted was his mother's hand on his head one more time. That same day, something unexpected happened. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, heard about Lakshmi Pichai's passing. He had met her once, during a small function, many years ago, and he remembered her grace, her simplicity, and her quiet wisdom. Modi knew this loss was not just personal for Sundar, but carried a deep message about life, humility, and family. He decided he would reach out personally, not as a political leader, but as a human being who understood the pain of losing a mother. When Sundar received a call from Modi's office, he was surprised. He expected a formal statement, maybe a tweet, but not this. The Prime Minister wanted to meet him face-to-face in private. Sundar agreed, not because of protocol, but because in his grief, he felt an unusual need to hear words from someone who had seen both power and loss in life. Later, that evening, as the house was filled with relatives, rituals, and the smell of incense, Sundar stepped out for a moment of quiet. He saw the Prime Minister's car approaching. Modi walked in with folded hands, his face serious yet gentle. There was no security show, no media, no cameras. Only silence and respect. The moment was powerful. Sundar, usually calm and composed, broke down. He folded his hands, bowed his head, and whispered, "I feel like I have lost everything." Modi placed his hand on Sundar's shoulder and said softly, "You have lost your mother, Sundar, but you have not lost her lessons. Her life is still inside you, in the values she gave you. The world respects you not just for what you built, but for the humility you carry. That humility is her gift. Do not let grief take it away from you." These words struck Sundar deeply. He looked up, tears in his eyes, and for the first time since his mother's passing, he felt a sense of strength. It was not complete, but it was enough to make him breathe again. That night, as Sundar sat alone after the rituals, he thought about what Modi had said. He realized something important. His mother's death was not just a personal tragedy. It was also a reminder of what truly matters in life: kindness, humility, and respect. Wealth and power fade, but values stay. Sundar promised himself he would live in a way that would honor her memory every single day. But little did he know. This promise would lead him into moments of great challenge, unexpected tests, and surprising turns. What began as personal grief would soon become a story that touched millions, teaching lessons of love, humility, and resilience. The promise of remembrance. The morning after Lakshmi Pichai's funeral, the house was still filled with relatives, neighbors, and close friends. People whispered in corners, some offering prayers, some silently sharing the grief. Sundar moved through the house like a shadow. His heart was still raw, but Modi's words from the night before stayed with him. They were not just words of comfort. They felt like a reminder, almost like a command. As he sat near his mother's favorite chair, Sundar ran his hand over the fabric, remembering how she used to sit there every evening, sipping tea and sharing simple stories of life. "Sundar," she often said, "power and position are temporary. Only kindness makes a person truly great." Those words were alive inside him, louder now than ever before. Sundar's wife, Anjali, walked in quietly and placed her hand on his shoulder. She had been strong during the rituals, supporting everyone, but he could see the sadness in her eyes. "Your mother always believed in you," she whispered, "but she also believed you would carry her values to the world. Maybe this is your time to prove her right." These words shook Sundar. He realized grief had tied him down, but remembrance could lift him. If he wanted to honor Lakshmi's memory, he could not just sit in silence. He had to turn her life into an example for others. That afternoon, Modi called again. This time it was not only a gesture of respect, but also an invitation. He wanted Sundar to join him in Delhi for a private meeting, away from the noise of politics. Sundar hesitated at first. He felt weak, emotionally broken. But then he thought of his mother's teachings. She had always told him that real strength is not about avoiding pain, but about walking with it. He agreed to go. The meeting was arranged quietly. There were no cameras, no official announcements. When Sundar arrived at Modi's residence, he was welcomed warmly. Modi sat with him in a simple room. No grandeur, no distractions. "Sundar," Modi began, "your mother's passing has touched me deeply. I met her only once, but I remember how she spoke. She was a woman of wisdom. Her death is not just your loss. It is a lesson for our nation. India must understand that greatness is not measured only by achievements, but by values passed from one generation to another." Sundar listened in silence, but every word sank into his heart. Modi continued, "I want us to create something, together in her memory, something that will remind people of the power of humility and respect. You have technology, I have governance. Together we can show the world that leadership is not about pride, but about service." For the first time since his mother's death, Sundar felt a sense of purpose. He realized this was not only about his personal healing, but about transforming grief into inspiration for millions. But even as they spoke, Sundar's heart carried doubt. Could he really turn his pain into strength? Could he honor his mother without letting grief crush him? He knew this journey would not be easy. There would be critics, challenges, and people who might not understand. But deep inside, he felt his mother's voice whispering, "Walk forward, Sundar. This is your test." That evening, as Sundar returned home, he sat by his mother's chair once again. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Amma, I promise I will not let your lessons fade. I will carry your memory not just in my heart, but into the world. I will make your life a light for others." Little did he know, this promise would soon be tested in ways he could not imagine. A storm was waiting, and in that storm, both Sundar and Modi would discover sides of themselves they never knew existed. The storm of doubts, the days after Sundar's promise to his late mother, felt heavy. He tried to return to his work, but every time he looked at his computer screen, his mind drifted back to her voice. The silence in his home was louder than any noise he had ever known. His children noticed it too. They tried to cheer him up, but grief has a way of hiding in the corners of every smile. When he received another message from Modi, Sundar hesitated. The Prime Minister wanted to meet again, this time not in private, but in a small gathering of students in Delhi. "They need to hear your story," Modi wrote. "They need to understand the values your mother gave you." Sundar sat for hours staring at the message. The thought of speaking about his mother in public scared him. His voice might break, his emotions might spill out, and the world would see a side of him that was vulnerable. He was not sure if he was ready for that. Anjali noticed his hesitation and said gently, Your mother always told you not to hide from truth. If you share her story, it will not make you weak. It will make her alive again through your words." Those words gave him courage. He agreed to join Modi at the event, the day of the gathering. Sundar stood backstage, nervous. The hall was filled with young students, eager to see him, the man who had risen from a modest Indian household to become the CEO of Google. But Sundar's mind was not on his title. It was on his mother and the empty chair that waited for him every night at home. Modi walked up to him before the event began and said, "Do not think of this as a speech. Think of it as a gift to your mother. Every word you speak will be a flower you place at her memory." When Sundar stepped onto the stage, the crowd clapped loudly, but he raised his hand for silence. He spoke slowly, his voice trembling at first. "My mother, Lakshmi Pichai, was not famous. She did not hold any position, but she taught me lessons that made me who I am. She taught me to respect people, to stay humble, and to never let success change my heart." The hall grew silent as Sundar continued. He shared stories of his childhood, how his mother encouraged him to study under the dim light of a kerosene lamp, how she reminded him that kindness is greater than knowledge, how she never allowed him to treat anyone with arrogance. Students listened with wide eyes, some even wiping away tears. Sundar felt his own voice breaking, but he did not stop. He realized that sharing his mother's story was not weakness, it was strength. When he finished, the hall erupted in applause, but Sundar did not feel pride. He felt peace. It was as if, for a moment, his mother's presence was there with him. Smiling. After the event, Modi told him, "You have given a gift today, but be ready, Sundar. The world will not always understand your journey. There will be people who question, who mock, who try to turn your grief into their gossip. You must stand firm, because truth always faces doubt before it shines." Those words turned out to be prophetic. Within days, headlines appeared in newspapers and on social media. Some praised Sundar's emotional speech, but others mocked him, calling it a strategy for sympathy, accusing him of using his mother's death for attention. The criticism hit Sundar hard. He felt the storm of doubts crashing inside him. Had he made a mistake by opening his heart? Was he dishonoring his mother by exposing her memory to the harsh eyes of the world? That night, as he sat in silence, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Modi. "Storms will always come, Sundar. But remember, trees with deep roots do not fall. Your mother gave you those roots. Trust them." Sundar read the message again and again. He knew the storm of doubts was not the end. It was only the beginning of a much bigger test that would shape not only his own path, but also the bond between him and the Prime Minister. The test of strength, the storm of doubts did not fade quickly. In the weeks after Sundar's speech, he found himself caught between two worlds. In one world, students and ordinary people sent him messages filled with love, telling him how his mother's story gave them hope. In the other world, critics questioned his intentions, turning his grief into headlines. The clash of these voices left Sundar restless at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he had done the right thing. Anjali tried to comfort him, reminding him that truth always shines brighter than lies. But Sundar could not silence the noise in his mind. One evening, as he sat in his study, he remembered Modi's words about deep roots. He realized that strength was not about avoiding criticism, but about standing tall despite it. Just then, his phone rang. It was Modi himself. His voice was calm, steady, almost like that of an elder guiding a younger brother. "Sundar, I know what you are feeling. I have lived through storms like this many times. When you try to do something meaningful, people will always question you. But remember, silence in the face of insult is sometimes the loudest answer." Those words gave Sundar courage, but Modi did not stop there. He invited Sundar to join him in Varanasi, a place where history and spirituality lived side by side. "I want to show you something," Modi said, "something that will help you understand the meaning of resilience." When Sundar arrived in Varanasi, he was taken through narrow lanes filled with temples, prayers, and the sound of bells. Modi led him to the banks of the Ganges River, where countless people had come for centuries to find peace in moments of pain. They stood together, watching the evening aarti as hundreds of lamps floated on the water, glowing against the darkness. "Look at the river," Modi said softly. "It carries everything. Clean water, dirt, offerings, ashes. It never stops, flowing." "That is resilience, Sundar. That is what your mother taught you without using these words. No matter what people throw into your life, you must keep flowing." Sundar felt something shift inside him. The sight of the glowing lamps, the steady rhythm of the chants, and Modi's words combined to bring him a moment of clarity. He realized his grief was part of his flow now. It would always travel with him, but it did not have to stop him. Later that night, Sundar wrote in his journal, "Amma, I understand now. Your lessons are not for me alone. They are for the world. I must carry them forward no matter the storm. But as peace began to return to Sundar's heart, life prepared another test. A corporate summit was scheduled in Mumbai, where leaders from around the world would gather. Sundar was invited to speak, and Modi encouraged him to attend. "This is not just about business," Modi said. "This is your chance to show that humility and strength can walk together." When Sundar took the stage at the summit, he felt the eyes of the world on him. He began his speech not with statistics or achievements, but with a story about his mother. The hall grew silent, the same way it had in Delhi. For a few minutes, Sundar forgot the critics and spoke only from his heart. But then, during the question session, a sharp voice from the audience asked, "Mr. Pichai, why do you always speak about your mother? Are you trying to build an image of humility for the world to admire? Is this not a clever mask to hide ambition?" The hall froze. Sundar stood still, the question cutting deep into his chest. For a moment, he felt his voice fail. But then he remembered the river, the lamps, and his mother's voice, telling him to respect people, even when they did not respect him. He smiled gently and answered, "I speak of my mother because she is the reason I am who I am. If sharing her story makes me look humble, then I will carry that image with pride. Ambition can build success, but only humility can build character. That is what she taught me, and I will never hide it." The hall erupted in applause, louder than before. Sundar had passed a test, not by fighting anger with anger, but by standing firm in respect. Modi, who was watching the event live, sent him a simple message afterward. "Your mother would have smiled today." Sundar read the message again and again, tears forming in his eyes. But he also knew this was not the final test. Life had more. Trials waiting, and some of them would cut even deeper than the storm of doubts. The hardest challenge after the summit in Mumbai, Sundar returned home with a new sense of calm. He had faced criticism, stood strong, and remembered his mother's lessons in front of the world. For a few days, life seemed to settle, but peace never lasts forever. And soon another storm arrived, one more personal than any before. A few weeks later, Sundar's family decided to visit a luxury hotel in Chennai for a quiet dinner. It was meant to be a small escape from grief, a chance to breathe after months of emotional weight. But what happened that night would cut him deeper than any headline. When they entered the hotel, Sundar noticed something unusual. The staff at the front desk looked at them with a certain coldness. Whispers passed from one employee to another. When his wife, Anjali, asked politely about their table, the receptionist responded in a dismissive tone as if their presence was an inconvenience. Sundar, being humble as always, did not react immediately. But then something happened that shook him. The staff, not recognizing Lakshmi Pichai's picture that Sundar carried in his hand, made a careless remark. They said, quietly, thinking no one would hear. These people think they are important because of their connections. Who even cares about their family? Those words pierced Sundar's heart like a knife. He was holding that picture because it gave him comfort, and now it was being disrespected. His children looked confused, and Anjali's face turned pale. Sundar felt his grief turning into fire for the first time. He raised his voice. "You do not know who my mother was," he said firmly, his eyes burning with pain. "She was a woman of grace, humility, and strength. She taught me respect, and yet here you stand showing none. You insult her memory not by words alone, but by your arrogance." The entire hotel lobby fell silent. The staff looked down in shame, realizing their mistake. Sundar's children clung to him, and his wife placed her hand gently on his arm, calming him. That very night, news of the incident reached Modi. He called Sundar immediately. His voice was heavy with emotion. "I heard what happened," Modi said. "It pains me deeply, Sundar. Disrespect is like poison. But remember, how you respond will decide if this insult becomes a wound or a lesson." Sundar was silent for a moment. His anger was still fresh, but Modi's words made him think. "Should I forgive them?" he asked quietly. Modi replied, "Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. If you forgive, you do not excuse their behavior, but you rise above it. And in rising, you make your mother's values stronger than ever." The next day, Sundar returned to the hotel, not for revenge, but for resolution. He asked to meet the same staff members. They stood nervously, expecting punishment. But instead, Sundar spoke softly. "You disrespected my mother's memory, and that hurt me. But I will not let anger guide me. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because my mother would want me to. She believed in respect, even for those who made mistakes." The staff were shocked. Some even had tears in their eyes. They apologized sincerely, and Sundar walked away with quiet dignity. His children, watching from behind, whispered to their mother, "Amma would be proud of Appa." That night, Sundar sat by his mother's chair again. He whispered, "Amma, today I forgave, because you taught me respect. I hope I honored you." When he checked his phone later, he found another message. From Modi, "You turned insult into pride today, Sundar. India needs more lessons like this. Your mother's spirit is alive, not just in you, but in everyone who learns from your actions." Sundar realized then that his mother's death had become more than personal grief. It had become a lesson, not just for him, not just for Modi, but for everyone who saw humility as the true face of strength. The bond of respect. After the hotel incident, something inside Sundar changed. He felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his heart. Forgiveness had not erased the insult, but it had transformed it into strength. Still, the journey was not over. Every evening when he sat by his mother's empty chair, he realized her lessons were guiding him step by step. A few days later, Modi invited Sundar to New Delhi once more. This time, it was not for a speech or a gathering, but for a personal conversation. "I want to share something with you," Modi said over the phone, "something I have rarely spoken about." When Sundar arrived, the two men sat in a quiet garden, away from all noise. Modi looked thoughtful, his eyes fixed on the flowers blooming nearby. "Sundar," he began, "when I lost my own mother, I felt the same emptiness you are feeling now. The world saw me as a leader, but inside I was a son in pain. Grief is the one thing that makes all humans equal. It does not care about power or position." Sundar listened carefully. He had always seen Modi as a strong leader, but now he was seeing him as a son who had walked through the same fire. "What kept me alive," Modi continued, was the decision to turn my grief into service. My mother's life was simple, but her lessons still guide me when I make decisions for millions of people. I believe your mother's lessons can do the same for you, Sundar. Not just for your company, but for the world. Those words touched Sundar deeply. He realized that both he and Modi were bound not only by success, but by loss and by the values their mothers had left behind. It was a bond of respect, a silent understanding between two men from different worlds, united by the same truth. Love for a mother never dies. It only transforms. Later, comma. As they walked through the garden, Modi said something unexpected. Let us create something together, in memory of Lakshmi Pichai. Not a monument of stone, but a monument of action. A program that teaches young people the value of humility, kindness, and respect. Your mother's lessons should not remain in your heart alone. They must live in the hearts of others. Sundar paused, thinking of his mother's gentle face, her quiet words, and her endless patience. Yes, he said softly. Let us do it. It will be my way of keeping her alive. Their plan was simple but powerful. A scholarship program for students from humble backgrounds, one that would not only support education but also teach values. Sundar offered to fund it, and Modi promised to give it reach across India. When the program was announced, it was not done with grandeur or loud celebration. It was announced quietly with the message that humility was greater than pride and respect was greater than success. The name chosen was simple. The Lakshmi Foundation. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of students applied. But what surprised Sundar most were the letters. Young people wrote about how their own mothers taught them small but powerful lessons, about honesty, about patience, about kindness. Sundar realized his mother's story had unlocked stories in countless others. But even in this moment of hope, challenges were not far away. Critics once again tried to twist the story, claiming the foundation was a tool for image building. Sundar felt the familiar sting of doubt return. This time, before he could sink into worry, Modi called him. His voice was calm. Remember, Sundar, roots and rivers. Your roots are your mother's values, and your river is your journey. Let the critics shout. Your work will answer them louder than your words. Those words settled in Sundar's heart like a shield. He realized now that grief had not broken him, it had connected him to something larger. It had tied his heart to Modi's in a way that no politics, no position, and no criticism could break. The final lesson. The launch of the Lakshmi Foundation spread quietly at first, like a soft breeze. But soon, its impact began to grow. Schools in small towns received support. Children who once thought education was beyond their reach were given hope, and families felt dignity returning to their lives. Sundar read letters from students who spoke about how their mothers were their first teachers. Every word reminded him of Lakshmi Pichai, and every smile of a child felt like her blessing. Modi, too, watched the foundation grow with pride. During one of their private meetings, he told Sundar, "This is bigger than politics, bigger than business. This is the kind of work that makes life meaningful. Your mother's lessons are no longer only in your home. They are in the hearts of children across India." Yet, with success came another test. A group of powerful critics accused the foundation of being a publicity stunt, saying it was created to improve images, not lives. Harsh articles were published trying to turn the noble act into something selfish. Sundar felt the old storm of doubt rising again. But this time, something was different. He remembered the river in Varanasi. He remembered forgiving the hotel staff. He remembered standing on stage and answering with respect. And most of all, he remembered his mother's chair, her soft voice, her gentle wisdom. Instead of replying to the criticism, Sundar chose silence and action. The foundation continued its work, untouched by the noise. Then came a moment that neither Sundar nor Modi would forget. A young girl from a poor village, one of the first students supported by the foundation, stood on stage during an event. With tears in her eyes, she said, "I never thought I would study beyond primary school, but because of the Lakshmi Foundation, I can now dream of becoming a doctor. I thank the leaders, but most of all, I thank the mother who inspired this." Her words echoed through the hall like a prayer. Sundar felt his chest tighten, his eyes wet. Modi, sitting beside him, placed a hand on his arm and whispered, "This is your mother speaking again, Sundar. Through this child, through every life touched, she lives on." In that moment, Sundar understood something final and eternal. His mother had not truly left him. Death had taken her body, but her values had turned into a force larger than life. Her lessons had passed from one heart to another, and now they belonged to the world. That night, Sundar sat once again by his mother's empty chair. But this time, he did not feel emptiness. He felt presence. He whispered, "Amma, your death broke me, but your lessons rebuilt me. You are alive in every child who learns, in every person who chooses respect over arrogance. I will carry you forever." As he closed his eyes, he realized the journey of grief had transformed into a journey of strength. Narendra Modi had stood by him, not as a leader, but as a friend who understood loss. Together they had shown that even in the darkest moments, humility and kindness could turn pain into pride. And so, Lakshmi Pichai's death was no longer just a son's sorrow. It had become a life lesson for both Sundar and Modi, and for everyone who believed that respect, resilience, and humility were greater than power.